occasionally you'll look up if a couple of hands were bugging you from the day.
Yeah.
And at this point, when I hear that from you, those words bugging me kind of goes through an Ike Haxton filter, which means something different than it does when I hear it from, let's say, Nick Petrangelo. Um, a hand. Let me read back another Ike quote that I really liked. I know a lot of people who take mistakes a lot harder than I do and respond to a mistake by identifying with fixing that exact problem. Make sure they never make that mistake again. That works for people. I don't want to shit on that strategy. It seems like in some cases they experience an unnecessary amount of pain around the whole. I don't think it's exactly maladaptive all the time. It can be. A person can become obsessed with a mistake that they make in some exotic scenario and spend a lot of time on a not very important problem. I think I'm driven by curiosity a bit more than a competitive sort of perfectionism, a bit more than a lot of my peers. And I think that's mostly served me well. It makes things more fun and relaxing to go about it that sort of way. It doesn't make me immune to the sort of inefficient tangents that I described. I can get fixated on even making a specific mistake that can be impetuous for me too. I think it's just different personalities, and I don't think one is better or worse.
Yeah, sure. So, like, kind of the archetype example that comes to mind for me went for, like, somebody getting fixated on a hand that, like, emotionally felt bad and putting a lot of effort into something not necessarily that valuable is like you're making a big call or a big bluff in three bet or four bet pot kind of river decision in a very, very specific spot where, like, you make this huge call at the table and you don't know if you were right or wrong and you lost. And so you feel bad and you want to look it up later and you pull up the closest sim you can find to this spot and you dig through this river node and you find your exact combo that you called with, and maybe it was a good call and now you're relieved, and maybe, oh shit, it looked like a fine hand to call with, but actually it loses 8 big blinds to call the river with this hand in a 200 big blind pot. And it's not obvious that that is actually an important mistake that you can learn a lot from. Like, maybe it's some spot where calling with Queen Jack against the computer is terrible and calling with Queen 10 is fine because, for some very specific reason, they have a bunch of King Jack bluffs and no King 10 bluffs. And, like, your human opponent is probably not actually playing that way. And, maybe even if you adjust the stack sizes and bet sizes to be exactly what happened in the hand instead of what's convenient to look up in your model, suddenly that's not even true in that scenario anymore. This stuff can be very, very sensitive to small changes in assumptions, and you're not learning anything that generalizes. And your intuition in the moment that you thought maybe the opponent is bluffing a little more than they should be actually might be more valuable than these little esoterica of how the kickers interact. And yeah, I think you can really do yourself a disservice by spending too much time banging your head against the wall trying to get a computer justification for the play you made and feel better about it, or understand exactly why this was the wrong kicker to call with. I mean, sometimes that kind of investigation is actually pretty valuable and does yield something that generalizes, but I think it can often be a really unuseful kind of perfectionism to put too much effort into that kind of thing. The kind of thing I'm much more interested in spending some time on is when I face a spot that is, at a pretty high reach part of the game tree, a flop spot in a single raised pot cut off against the big blind. If I don't know exactly what I'm doing, that's important. That's a thing I can fix. Those scenarios are going to come up again. It feels really important to me that I have the right idea about how those spots work. And that's not to say that I'm stressed out about getting the bet sizes exactly right or nailing the exact combos that you do any particular thing with, but I do want to get it pretty close with the amount of money I'm putting in the pot from either side and what I think the marginal continue against a C bet is, and raising the C bet with roughly the right global frequency. And, if there's a threshold of pure raise, top pair queen kicker or better, I want to have that dialed in. Those are the kind of things that, if it comes up in game, I'm playing this spot and I have a sense that I don't know what my strategy is supposed to be, or I'm guessing at my strategy and I don't feel very confident about whether it's right, or my opponent does something that surprises me, where somebody who I think is a really strong player and unlikely to get this wrong does something I'm not expecting. Those are the kind of things that I'll take a note on my phone. I want to look at this later and make sure I'm not missing something big that's going to come up again.